Hi, I'm Selena from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, and I'm here with Matt Bell, who is the author of Appleseed. And I'm going to let him tell you all about his book and his other books too, if he wants. So, Matt, could you please tell briefly us a little bit about yourself and about your books?
Sure. Thanks so much for talking to me, Selena. My name is Matt Bell. I'm from Michigan originally, live in the Southwest now in Arizona. Appleseed is my third novel and my eighth book. So been writing a little bit. To tell you a little bit about it, it's a speculative science fiction novel, also fantastical, set over about 1,000 years of past, present, and future. Begins in 1799 with a mythological retelling of Johnny Appleseed, goes into a sort of near future late climate change scenario, and then ends 1,000 years from now on a sort of continent spanning glacier. So it covers this sort of epic amount of time and in kind of different genres and different modes along the way.
Okay, great. Now, for readers unfamiliar with your work, how would you describe what you write?
Yeah, I always feel like I just describe a lot of what I do as sort of like weird books, but like I feel like I've done a lot of different things. I really love books of different genres. One of my sort of goals is to write a book in every genre that I love. And I think sometimes that means more than one kind of thing at once. Part of this book is very sincerely kind of straightforward, I think, science fiction. Part of it's mythological retelling, which I've always done a lot of. So hopefully kind of genre spanning or genre bending or sort of hybrid sort of stories. Yeah, and I think usually maybe on the slightly weirder side of fiction, which is fun.
Okay, and what can readers expect from your Appleseed book?
Yeah.
A little bit more.
I hope it's a big adventure. I think that kind of long time span and sort of dramatic action that way. But I also think it's about climate change and manifest destiny and our relationship between the human and the non-human, and really both an imagined future and also about like sort of the wonder of the everyday and the wonder of the natural world. And so hopefully it's both an encounter with sort of wildness as well as sort of speculative idea of what the future might be.
So, what kind of research went into writing Appleseed?
Yeah, a lot of research, a lot of it just reading, climate change books and environmental theory, some in-person research, sometimes kind of accidental. I was writing about, for instance, like a favorite research story. I was writing about the glacial sort of future in the book for maybe a year and a half, and I went to Iceland for work. And so right.
Wow.
And so took the chance while I was there to hike one of the glaciers in Iceland, and so got to do kind of firsthand sort of research, and that was pretty cool. I'd like I said, I'd already been writing about it for a year, so it's kind of like visiting like a dream I'd been having. I sort of like arrived in this place I've been visualizing. So some of those things like that have been really great. Part of the book takes place in Yellowstone, where I'd been a couple times, and so I was writing about places that I knew, but still did a lot of research on. And then a lot of research about geoengineering, because there's some sort of geoengineering and bioengineering in the book. So I read a lot about like gene splicing and CRISPR and things like that, and then like very little in the book, but I did a lot of research to write the little bit I did. So kind of interesting, sort of wide-ranging research.
So, what kind of background do you actually have?
Oh yeah, no, like completely. I'm an English major,
So
but
that was quite a bit of research then.
yeah, that's part of the like reason to write books, right? Is like to get to do a deep dive in something for a couple of years. It's sort of a joy. And my dad was a computer programmer, and we grew up with like I don't know, like a sciencey family and an outdoorsy family. So like it was all new research, but not like brand new interests, if that makes sense.
Okay, that's great. And so, what was your favorite research story?
Yeah, so obviously like the glacier was pretty good. I think that was probably maybe my favorite individual thing I did. I'm trying to think if there's something else that sticks out as really specific. I could say one thing that was research that this wasn't like obvious research, but around the time, maybe like the year before I started writing this book, I started running and I started trail running. I spent a lot of time hiking and running and writing this book about wilderness and wildness. Chapman, the main character of the 1799 part, runs through the wilderness lives of, he's a half human, half animal fawn, and there's sort of this like joy at being in wild places. And in my joy at running in wild places was also like research for this book that I didn't mean to be, you know, it was sort of like incidental. But if I wasn't spending a day or two, you know, running and hiking in the desert and the mountains here, then I wouldn't probably have written this book in the same way. You know, this sort of, yeah, not purposeful research in a certain way, but absolutely was. Yeah.
Okay. And what was the biggest challenge in writing and putting out Appleseed?
Yeah, the book takes place over 1,000 years and has these 3 interlocking storylines. So sort of weaving those together was, you know, one of the puzzles of the book, and sort of figuring out how to do that. But I think that's part of the fun too. Like, I think one of the, everything that's a problem in writing a novel is also like part of the fun of doing it. And so figuring out the sort of where things could intersect and be the most fun, or be the most surprising, was both really hard and also maybe the most fun part of like the late stages of the book. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So how actually did you overcome the challenge?
Yeah, even when I drafted the book, I wrote each storyline in like 30-page chunks, and I would just switch every 30 pages. But I knew that kind of wouldn't be how the book works. Like, that's, chapters were too long, or it was arbitrary. So when I got done with the first draft, I rewrote each storyline by itself. And it was sort of, they were each kind of like a book length. They were really long. And then once they were as good as they could be individually, then I wove them back together and sort of kind of looking for opportunities in that way. So it was kind of a long process, but I think in the end, really great. I think there was interesting things happened even late in the book as I started doing that arranging, where I was like, oh, maybe that could be this, or, you know, you sort of have these like late stage ideas. Yeah.
Did you actually have the entire book kind of outlined out ahead of time, or?
No. I can't really outline before I write a first draft. I maybe I have some ideas and some things I'm going to write about, but I really discover as I go for the most part. I outline between first and second drafts. So I do my planning sort of in this in-between place, and then I usually rewrite from scratch. So there is an outline, but I've usually written for a year before I write the outline, which is an intense way maybe to do it, but it's sort of a nice balance of like discovery and planning. Yeah.
Interesting way to do it. When you were writing it, which character did you love or hate the most?
Oh yeah, I don't know if I hate any characters, but Chapman, who's the fawn character, you know, sort of the initial inspiration of the book. So I really loved him. The character in the far future one is a bioengineered sort of creature who eventually has this like tree growing out of his body. And a lot of the book is him like trying to protect and care for this tree. And I just found that really touching. It was sort of like the one other living thing, and he's trying to take care of it. Maybe a character that was more difficult, in the near future part, there's a woman named Yuri Mirov who runs this sort of like global corporation. And she was interesting to figure out because she's the antagonist of the book, but I didn't want her to be a villain. Like, she's still trying to do something about climate change. She's trying to fix the world, just not in the way I would want it done. And so she can't be a villain if she's trying to do something about this problem, right? And so getting that balance right was really interesting, where so she could be the bad guy, but also not be a villain. And that was interesting to figure out.
What else can we expect from you in the future?
Oh, I don't know. Probably more long, weird books. I feel like I have a friend who talk about like every writer having like a scale. There's like a size their ideas show up, and mine seem to be getting bigger. So I mean, if this book's 500 pages and covers 1,000 years, I don't know what bigger means, but like I do feel like there's like sort of a scope I like to play on right now. So I think that has been also part of the challenge, like how to write these sort of epic kind of books that seem like you can really dive into and spend time in. So more of that, I'm sure.
Great. So nothing particular.
No, I'm working on a new novel, but probably shouldn't talk about it too much yet. Yeah.
Okay. You're keeping that a secret right now.
Yeah, for myself a little bit too. I'm figuring out as I go again.
Okay. Now I have some questions for you about being a writer. What's your favorite part of being a writer? of the whole writing and publishing process?
Sure. I mean, my favorite part of writing, like day to day, is really probably, playing with language and just like at the level of the sentence. I just, even on a day where I don't know what's happening in the plot, or I can't make, write good dialogue or something, like I can still like kind of play with sort of language. I mean, that's the sort of like primal joy of it. Favorite part of publishing is always when other people are reading the book and sort of reacting to it and enjoying it. You spend so much time by yourself doing it, and then it's always like completely surprising what people like about books and don't like about books, and you're like, how did I get so much of that wrong? But it's so nice to be surprised by it. The reaction is never quite what you expect, and I think that's like incredibly rewarding.
Okay, great. What do you consider the most challenging part of the writing process, and how do you overcome that?
Yeah, I think I think one of the things you have to have if you're going to write books is just a kind of perseverance in the face of uncertainty. There's, the being in like the middle of a novel, it's like they're usually not very good, sort of like you just have this like big pile of stuff, and it's like I don't know what's going to happen with this, and that it has worked out enough times for me that I know it'll work out in the end. But there's always this sort of middle part where you couldn't show it to anybody and it's not really that good, and you sort of just have to believe in yourself or believe in the process, and that never really gets easier. Like I know it's going to happen, but there's still sort of pushing through that is always a tough part, but so rewarding when you feel the turn and you can feel like, okay, this is going to sort of work out. So yeah, I think that sort of being alone with the difficulty of it is a hard part of writing.
Hmm. So, what has been your favorite adventure during your writing career?
Oh, like actual career stuff. I don't know. I think this is maybe writing adjacent, but I teach as well, and I for 4 years I taught in a program where we went with graduate students to Asia, to Hong Kong and Singapore and Thailand and Taiwan, and worked with local writers in those places. And I think that was incredibly formative for me. Both it was fun, obviously. It was fun to travel and it was fun to be in different places that I didn't know very much about it at first. But also to see like different literary cultures and to see like the writing being done in Hong Kong is very different than the writing that's being done here. The writing in Singapore is very different. And it was both kind of eye-opening and also like made me really aware of like maybe how ours is built or how we talk about it, because just seeing a different context. That's really unforgettable. I think, again, it's hard to say like what changed about my writing because I did that, but I know things did, and I think that was really important for me.
So, what is the greatest lesson you've learned thus far in your writing career?
Ooh, I think the big lesson really is that like if you write the books you actually want to write, you write like you just trust like your own sort of instincts or your weird thoughts or your odd feelings are valid. I think they usually tend out to be like people do like those things. They do move toward it. If you try to write a book everybody will like, I think it'll be bland. I think you write the book that you really want to make, and that sort of the universal is in the particular or something, right? Like your like specific feelings that feels like no one else has ever had or no one has, turn out to be things that lots of people have and are glad to see in books. The things you care about have value, and that if you put them in your writing, that will be recognized by other people. It's hard to believe that at the beginning, right? And yeah, but I think it bears out if you're sort of true to what you're actually interested in or actually want to write.
So, what piece of advice would you want to share with other writers?
Yeah,
Excuse me.
I think the thing that makes like the writers who I think seem the most unique or seem the most innovative or singular, whatever word you'd use for it, seem to me to be the writers who are the most widely read, reading lots of genres, lots of traditions, lots of eras, reading translation, reading small press books and big press books. And, I think the wider your influence sort of base is, the more unique the work you'll inevitably do is. I think that, from the beginning of my career to now, like that seems to be the most important thing. Like the wider I can make that sort of art foundation, the better I can write. So yeah, I think that sort of love what you love, but don't think like this is the only thing you love, right? Like go find, like read as widely as you can. It'll just make you a more interesting and sort of fuller writer.
Hmm. And are there any groups, clubs, or organizations that might have helped you that you would recommend to others?
Yeah, I think well, it's not, I think it's still around, but it's not what it was when I was doing it. But when I was young, I was writing in rural Michigan, and there were not other writers around me, or at least that I knew of. I shared work in, was called the Zoetrope online workshop. It's still, I think it still exists, but it was really active maybe like 15 years ago. And that was really formative, sort of finding a community wherever you can seems important. I feel like there's a lot more online classes and online sort of opportunities like that than there used to be. And some of it's so great. Some of the stuff that like Story Studio Chicago does or Catapult does or things like that. Really find your people now and find like good sort of instruction and good communities. So it does seem like wherever you are, there's a way to sort of find those people, even if you can't find them in person. But there's still other ways.
Okay. Now I have questions for you about you as a person.
Sure.
What is the one thing that most people don't realize about you?
Oh, I don't know. That seems so hard to answer. Um, I think this probably won't be apparent in this video because hopefully I'm being reasonably friendly. But one thing that's always really funny is when because my books can be kind of weird and kind of dark, and this probably is like a horror writer problem, right? It's like, but I do occasionally show up for an event and people are like, "Oh, you're nice," or "you're seem really normal." And I'm like, "Oh." Who did you think was coming? And it's so weird that you invited me thinking I was going to be really weird and strange. So, weird on the page, normal on the street, right? I think like that's sort of the goal.
Okay, that is very true. I think a lot of people think, "Oh God, your writing is really
Right.
weird." You
I
must
mean,
be a strange
so much
person.
like crime books are written by like just like really, really steady people who set up like they're like, oh, I wouldn't imagine this person thought of like 40 murder books I've read, like
Oh, you must be a murderer.
right, yeah. Good. I like it.
Okay. So, what is or are your passions when you're not writing? And how do you make time for your hobbies and things that you love?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of things. I go to see live music a lot, or did, pre-pandemic, and can't wait to again.
Mm,
I love cooking. I cook a lot. I do most of the cooking in our house. I mentioned being a runner and a hiker. I spend a lot of time outdoors. Video gamer. I've been a video gamer my whole life. I think as far as finding time, you find time for what you want to do. You sort of structure your life around the things you actually want to spend time on if you can, and that's part of it. uh Writing wise, I write as soon as I get up in the morning if I can. And so my writing gets done, and then the rest of my life is there for me. And so that's a lot of it for me, is like not have my writing compete with my rest of my life if I can avoid it.
that's great. Yeah.
It's hard.
Um, yeah. So, what does your writing space look like, and what do you need to have around you while you're
Yeah.
writing or editing?
Yeah, this is my home office. This is the back corner of it here. I've been lucky to have a home space where we've lived most of the time. So we're just right in a room surrounded by books. I mean, I think that's half of it. I just like to have all my books with me. I had one house where I had a really small office and I had to have my books in another room, and I wrote really badly there. I think there's just something about being like surrounded by all this stuff I love, is important. Other than that, I don't think it's so uninteresting now. It's like there's a computer on a desk. There's a it's sort of pretty basic. But I don't know. It's a nice space. My office here kind of looks out into the rest of the house, so it's private and not in a way that's, I think, pleasing. It's not separate from my life. It's part of it, and I like that.
I see your book in the back there, Appleseed.
Yeah, I've been doing book events. I can have one there.
Yeah. Do you need to have certain drinks or food or anything like that with you?
No, not too much. I listen to music usually while I write, so that's
That was my
pretty
next question.
usual. Oh yeah, I listen to a lot of music, but often a lot of like kind of drony, repetitious sort of electronic music, or movie soundtracks. I really like movie scores. I think they're just like the big sort of drama of them is good for writing. But yeah, music on more or less all the time. But other than that, I'm not super precious about it. I just sort of do the work.
Without lyrics or with lyrics?
Both, but I do write without lyrics a lot, but I definitely write with lyrics as well.
Really?
Yeah, I think music's one of the things. I mean, I just love it so much, and I think like it's one of the things that keeps you at the desk, right? You're just like you're listening to something you like, so you stick around, and then you get the work done. But yeah, I don't find it too distracting. I'm sure there's kinds of music I couldn't listen to, but most of what I listen to is fine.
Interesting. Um, Now, do you have, well, writers often have furry or feathered or otherwise non-human companions that either help or hinder them with their work. And do you have anything like that?
Yeah, I wish I had a feathered one, just like a huge bird that sat on me when I wrote. That sounds great. I have a I have a very old cat. I have a 18-year-old cat who we always joke is my research assistant, who is often with me when I'm writing and down at my feet or on the desk, or which is great. I'm home alone most of the time I'm writing, so it's nice to have another being around, and also like my reading companion. Like she lately sleeps like right here while I'm reading, so I just sort of it keeps me in the book because I'm being crushed by an old cat. So yeah, it's great.
I just interviewed another author who had a parrot on his shoulder.
Unreal. Now that seems distracting to me, like
It was wonderful.
Great.
So what's your cat's name?
Karma. Yeah.
That's great for a writer. I love it.
It's right. Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
It's perfect. Oh, great. So I only have two more questions for you. Okay. One is, where can people find your work aside from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, of course, and every video? I know people are probably going to get sick of me saying this if they watch a lot of the videos, but you can get your books, Matt's books, at Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, and you can call us at 508-796-5613, or you can order his books, or any books actually, by sending email to orders@anniesbooksworcester.com. And where else can people find your books, Matt?
I think my hope is always that people will buy it from their local bookstore if they can. I mean, I think that's, the best place to get it. But, they're around, and I think wherever people want to get them is fine. But yeah, if you can buy it from your local indie, you should.
Okay. And now how can we follow your work and share your awesomeness?
Oh, website is mattbell.com, so that's easy. And then I'm on Twitter as mdbell79. So those are probably the easiest places to find me.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. And we hope that if you ever do get into the Boston area or Worcester area, actually, you'll come and visit.
I haven't been to Worcester in a couple of years, and we will next time I'm in town. It'd be good.
Great. Well, thanks very much. And we will be seeing you, and good luck with your book.
Thank you.
Bye.